symbol of excellence in sports entertainment.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Can Chris Hero Save Wrestling? I am Chris Hero. First and foremost, I wanted to let everybody know that scheduling has been a little difficult lately. I've had a lot going on. Con Rizzle has had a bit going on as well. So we haven't had time to sit down and record a show. So for that, we apologize. But I do appreciate the patience. I appreciate the support and interest. And we're going to do a little something special for you today. This will be my second installment of hashtag Ask Wrestling Genius. So the way that this works is I go back through old tweets that I've received with the hashtag Ask Wrestling Genius, and all the questions today are questions that I've already answered online, but I thought I'm going to go ahead and revisit these questions and get them out to a larger audience than just the handful of people that saw them on Twitter. So I am going to get started with no further ado. I have a question from the one and only Real Hero 120-12089. My friend Jamail, he's done a great job over the years of putting up tons of Japanese wrestling footage. Good guy. He has suspect taste in college basketball teams. But that aside, Jamail wants to know what's the best version of the vertical drop brainbuster that you have seen throughout when applied properly. So the brainbuster, you know what it is. You hook them like a suplex, and rather than landing them flat on their back, you kind of pull them straight down right onto the top of their head. I believe this move was innovated by Carl Cox once upon a time, passed down to a guy that patterned his style after Carl Cox, Dick Murdoch. So growing up, Dick Murdoch was the guy that did the brainbuster. Coco Beware had the Ghostbuster, of course. And a number of people have done it throughout the years. You've got Liger, who has a great brainbuster. Shinya Hashimoto would just crunch people with this thing. And for my taste, my favorite brainbuster would be that of Eddie Guerrero, also known as Black Tiger in New Japan. He just had such snap, such execution when he would pull this move down. And he also has an incredible belly to back suplex where it's not just lift them up, fall back. He would jerk them up right when they would be about shoulder height, and then he would just kick himself out, pull them straight down. Just an excellently executed maneuver. Eddie Guerrero, brainbuster, a little trivia here because of Carl Cox and then later Dick Murdoch. The suplex in Japanese wrestling is just called the brainbuster. So when you're watching and you see somebody do just a straight up regular suplex and you hear the commentator say brainbuster, that is why. So they have a bit of a different name for the brainbuster where it's a sheer drop or a more dangerous version. So good question, Jamail. And let's all make sure that we truly appreciate an awesome brainbuster. Not that there's anything wrong with the traditional suplex, but my next question comes from Seth Hansen, 1982, Wrestling the Way You Remember It. Who are the wrestler or wrestlers you wish you could have been able to wrestle? And that's a great question. Because there are many wrestlers who I admired when I was a fan throughout a lot of my career that for one reason or another, I'll never have the opportunity to wrestle. And going back to my last answer, Eddie Guerrero is at the top of that list. I think for my money, I think Eddie is the greatest overall pro wrestler of all time. And the reason I say that is I think he just ticks off all the boxes for me. Great technique, right? Great intensity in the ring. He was a master of a number of styles. He was a competent luchador. That's not really where he made a huge name for himself, but it is a big part of his career. He mastered the Japanese style of wrestling. Um, we saw him just purely as a technical wrestler in his matches with Dean Malenko. He just didn't exude much personality yet at that point, but he was so good. His maneuvers, his mannerisms, all were wonderful. Then he turned heel in WCW, and we saw a new side to Eddie Guerrero. He just became ferocious. His feud with Chavo, very, very big fan of that. I liked all the little antics they had together. He took things to a different level in WWE. He made his way all the way up to the top of the card and was a credible world champion. And he's also someone that could wrestle somebody like a Rey Mysterio, and somebody that he towered over and could get the best matches of his career out of him. And then he could turn around and work with a guy like Batista, a guy that towered over him, and he could have great matches with him. Eddie could be funny, he could be serious, he could make you laugh, make you cry. So that is why I personally rate him across the board. Other people up there for me are guys like Terry Funk. I think Terry Funk is incredible too. But that is not because they're better at everything than everybody. It's that their average across the board is exceptional. Other people on this list, I know I've talked about Eddie for a minute. The next one on the list would be Toshiaki Kawada, Dangerous K, historically from All Japan Pro Wrestling. My favorite of the four pillars. And a lot of people will be surprised by that because of how much of my work I patterned after Misawa. But Kawada, his selling, his intensity, he didn't have an appearance that would stand out similar to someone like Misawa or Kobashi. He had a different background than Taue. I have met Kawada. I met him at his ramen restaurant, Menjurus K. And he was very pleasant, which is funny because you always hear stories of Kawada not being a fan of gaijin wrestlers. Obviously, we're not in a wrestling capacity. I was eating a bowl of ramen from his restaurant, so of course he's going to be nice to me. But that was still a fun little moment for me. He ended up coming to Noah for a tour after Misawa passed, and I left the tour right before he got there. So I never had the ability to cross paths with Kawada, which I am personally disappointed by, but that's just kind of how it goes in pro wrestling sometimes. You just like ships in the night, one would say. The great Muta, or Keiji Muto. I've been on a handful of shows with him, but we've never crossed paths in the ring. He's the current GHC heavyweight champion. So he hasn't retired yet, so it's not completely out of the question. He's somebody I would love to wrestle. I did get to wrestle Misawa a half dozen or so times in six-mans and tags. A couple very memorable tags for me. But I never had a singles with Misawa. And then to round this out, a guy that I mentioned earlier, Rey Mysterio. Rey Mysterio Jr., I would love to have had a singles match with him, or would love to have one with him at some point under someone's banner. I wrestled him in a six-man tag in Dallas Mania Weekend 2016. It was myself, Zack Sabre, Brian Cage taking on Ricochet, Matt Sydal, and Rey Mysterio. And he's somebody I have looked up to greatly over the years, literally, not figuratively, as you would guess. But I think he is, he's a top 10 all-time great. Just the way he was able to transcend Lucha Libre and become such a big star, and to have great matches with people of all shapes, sizes, and experience levels. He's incredible. And he's a guy that I would like to work with in a one-on-one match. So, Seth, thank you very much for your question. I hope that was a satisfactory answer. I was not bound by any character restraints. All right. We have a question from a former coworker of mine, Alicia Taylor from NXT, and she wants to know, who are your favorite Japanese women's wrestlers? What a great question. I adore Japanese women's wrestling, and my choices are going to be from, not necessarily, there's only one girl on here who works full time right now. My list is Manami Toyota, one of the best in-ring performers in pro wrestling history. She's incredible. Bull Nakano, man, what a legend. She's just so ferocious and also very, very agile, could move around so well. She was incredible. Aja Kong, what a beast. And she does still currently work. But the next one on my list is someone who works full time, and that would be Meiko Satomura. You see her in person and you think, oh, she's kind of petite, she's kind of small. She, carries herself in a very polite manner. And then you hear her entrance music and you see her come out to the ring and you realize, man, she's just an assassin. She's there to chop someone's head off. And I've had the privilege to spend a good amount of time with her over the past couple years. Great person, incredible performer in the ring. So we've got Bull, Aja, Manami, and Satomura. And in addition to this, a lot of the comments that I got on that were, what about this person? What about this person? Whatever. So many wonderful Japanese women's wrestlers. So I responded to that with a couple other women's wrestlers that I don't think are as revered as a whole. The diehard wrestling fans are more than familiar with these women, but as far as international fans from this current era, I just wanted to drop a couple names in there for other people to check out if they weren't familiar. And those were Akira Hokuto. Gosh, she was incredible. I know some people think of her as the greatest women's wrestler of all time, and it's a hell of an argument. She was awesome. I wish her career would have been a little bit longer. I wish she would have gotten to work with more women. But she's fantastic. We've got Chaparita Asari, and she has the distinction of being the first person in WWF history to hit a sky twister on WWF television. She came in with those girls in the mid to late 90s. I was not watching at that time, so I did not see until much later, but it's very surreal to see girls like her and Aja Kong in a WWF ring. Chaparita, sorry. Again, she's somebody that I wish would have had a bit of a longer career, but she was just phenomenal, just a great athlete. She did some techniques in the ring that no one could do quite as well as she could. You have Kyoko Inoue. She's the one with the red and yellow face paint, the red and yellow tassels. She could move like a lightning bolt 1 second and then she'd come down like a hammer the next. Just a great performer. Her match with Manami Toyota, or just her series of matches with her, are just incredible. They work so well together. And the last one I'm going to name here is Mariko Yoshida. She just exceptional technique, and she doesn't get nearly the praise of a lot of these other women, and it's a shame. If you haven't seen a Mariko Yoshida match, I would highly encourage you to go do some Googling, do some searching, buy a couple DVDs and check her out, because incredible performers, all of these women. So as far as Japanese women's wrestling, those are my choices. It's a lot, it's overwhelming. But if you're not familiar, take one of the names, pick them, and watch a couple matches. It's incredible, all the different footage that we have access to on YouTube. So check them out. Thank you very much, Alicia Taylor, for your question 2 years ago. This question comes from Chris Parcella, aka at Fat B Arthur 315. Hell of a name. Best standing drop kick. At 6'3" with no vertical, I've always been impressed by it. I know Joe Savoldi invented it, but I'd have to go with Randy Orton. So when I think of standing drop kick, Mr. Perfect, Kurt Hennig comes to mind. I just always imagine him grabbing the guy by the back of his head and hopping off and kicking him right in the face. But when it comes to drop kicks, the name at the top of my list any and every single time is Doug Furness. Doug Furness was an exceptionally strong power lifter, like one of the strongest men in the world at that time. So you would expect, oh man, he's going to be a hoss. He's not going to move around too well. Wrong. Doug Furness was so explosive. What's cool is over the past few years, he's gotten quite a bit of love on Twitter. You put his name into a Twitter search and you'll come upon a handful of GIFs of him just hitting these incredible drop kicks. He also had he'd use a Frankensteiner back then in a bit of a, with a little bit more finesse. You would see Scott Steiner do them where it looks like he's trying to pop the guy's head off. But these had just a little bit more flow to them and a little bit more body control. Doug Furness comes in mind. The first time I saw Paul London do a drop salt where he would come up and drop kick the guy and go straight back. Maybe he even lands on a second opponent that's there. That absolutely caught my eye. Just a phenomenal athlete, something I've never been able to do. And it just amazes me so much to see people with that athleticism, that body control, knowing how to just control your landing and, don't hurt yourself. You don't hurt your opponent. It's just a work of art. And then the last person I'm going to mention my little dark horse candidate here is Paul Roma. I always thought Paul Roma had an awesome drop kick. He was very agile in the ring. He looked like $1 million. As a kid, I always thought he was going to be the next guy. I always thought, oh man, it's his turn. He's going to get a push and get the Intercontinental title or something like that. When he was announced as the new Horseman, I think myself and Paul Roma's family were the only ones who were legitimately excited. But yeah, those are the guys that I think of when drop kicks come to mind. Thank you very much for that, Fat B Arthur, if that is your real name. All right, this next question is from Reese on Wrestling. Reeselmania, how clever. How were the atomic and inverted atomic drop ever legal moves when they're essentially kneeing your opponent in the balls? That is a very good question because there are a lot of atomic drops that look like blatant nut shots. It just is clear as day. And then also how the person sells it. It's, you go back and look how Rick Rude would sell an atomic drop. You could tell that it is not his balls, but his tailbone, because that's the whole thought of an atomic drop. You're lifting the guy. Gosh, I think back to Bob Backlund's atomic drop or his atomic. Yeah. I think that's just what he called it. His running atomic drop, where he'd take the guy legs straight up in the air, drive him across the ring and just slam him down across the knee. It's very clearly the tailbone that he's going after. Inverted atomic drop is a little more suspect because come on, man, the guy's package is right there. I don't know if back in the day guys wore cups, so it would not affect your nether regions quite as much. But that's the thought process. It's supposed to be a tailbone bump, and you're supposed to sell it accordingly. Unless you're in the ring with Fuerza Guerrera, where he kind of lifts you up like a spine buster, turns his back to the referee, and gives you like a little quick ball shot. That is definitely not tailbone related offense. So I think it's down to the wrestlers and their execution of the move and how they sell it. But I mean, if you take a child and you put a wrestling match in front of them and an atomic drop comes, I think they know. To them, I think it looks like a ball shot. So you have to be very precise in the way that you do it. And right here, we're going to go with one last question. And this question is Leon Nelson. Leon _ Leon Nelson. What's going on, Leon? Thank you for submitting a question. What is the most painful and common injury a wrestler can pick up? I would say concussion, but I'm no pro wrestler. A concussion, obviously, is way more common than it should be. But those are just the hazards that come with throwing yourself down onto a mat with force and velocity, and it's tough. That's why you build up your neck strength, is so you can tuck your chin so that the back of your head doesn't rattle onto the mat and your brain doesn't ricochet off the inside of your skull. That is no good. As far as painful, I'm going to go with lower lumbar. For me, there have been a handful of times in my career, 3, maybe 4 times, when I have had what has felt like a debilitating back injury. I've had to miss shows because of it. You forget, you take for granted how much your back and the muscles in your back actually do to keep you going. There's a difference between getting a little backache or some kind of a cramp or a pulled muscle. Those things are uncomfortable. But when you get back spasms in your lower lumbar, it is 100% debilitating. There was a WrestleMania weekend show in Phoenix in 2010, and I rolled out of the ring in my match, and it was a ring that I was not familiar with, so I misjudged my landing, and I landed feet first, but in the way that I did it, the way my legs were extended, because I was expecting to land, just 2 inches earlier. That's, about all the difference it was. It jolted my back, and man, it killed me. I could not work the following day. I could not stand up straight. I could stand kind of bent over a little bit, but once you do that for a couple of minutes, the rest of your muscles in your back kind of seize up, and man, you're just walking around in a lot of pain. That was actually the week before Claudio and I won the Ring of Honor titles from the Briscoes in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I had that in the back of my mind the whole time. I'm like, oh my gosh, how am I going to be able to do this? How am I going to be able to have this match at such a high, a high standard of work when you're in there against a team like the Briscoes, a pay-per-view title match. It weighed heavily on me. And bit by bit, my back got, a couple percentage points better every day. And I went into the match banged up, and I was able to make it through. But it's funny because your back can feel like, oh, that's it. It's over. I'm never going to walk straight again. My back is forever messed up. And then 7 days later, be able to go in the ring and bump and wrestle. It's incredible that your body at one point tells you that it's done. It's over. I'm going to have to get a back implant or something, get rid of this back, get me a new one. But then it's just, muscle spasms and obviously you can have disc damage as well. But I've been very fortunate that all these excruciating moments that I've dealt with in regards to my back have not resulted in the need for any kind of surgery or anything like that. But painful as hell. Not a fan. Take care of your backs, do a lot of stretching, um, and just be smart. You know, it's also in the type of bed that you sleep in. It's also in the type of car that you drive. And if you're in a, you've got a long road trip after a show, you mess your back up in the match, and now you're going to sit in the back seat with two other people and cramp yourself up. When you get out of that car, it is not going to be pleasant, I promise you. So just be smart, take care of your backs, especially when you're in a business that involves throwing your back down on wood and steel. Thank you, Leon. Work on that vertical. Oh no, that was the previous guy. Take care of your back. I think that is going to wrap it up for us on the second installment of hashtag Ask Wrestling Genius. I will let you know that we do have some time set aside to record another episode in the next week or two. I'm going to have a whole lot more free time. We'll get some episodes in the can. Make sure we don't miss any more weeks. Again, I apologize for that. I know you guys have really been fiending for your Can Chris Hero Save Wrestling fix. And who am I to deprive you of that? This show has been so fun. I love talking about wrestling. I love interacting with everybody. Conrad is such a great co-host with me. I really enjoy the rapport that we have between one another, and I'm excited for the future shows that we may have. There's a lot that I still want to talk about, and there's just more and more happening in the world of wrestling every day. So far, I've done 2 signings. I did a signing with High Spots that went very well, and then just the other weekend, Rachel and I flew up to New York City. We did a signing at the Wrestling Universe store, and I obviously hate traveling with conditions as they are right now, but we were up and back the same day. It was pretty painless. It was so good to see fans in person and to talk with everybody. And it is something we take for granted, the ability to connect with people from all over the world and just get to know them. I saw a lot of familiar faces, and I saw a lot of new faces too. We were at a table, and the table next to us was the tandem of Kylie Ray and former WWF ring announcer Mike McGurk. What a foursome, the 4 of us, huh? But man, the fans were there the whole 2 hours we were there. Line was out the door. Everybody was cool. It makes us feel good to spend time chatting with different people that have supported us over the years, and I miss that terribly. So don't worry if you see anybody on Twitter talking about how I'm going to retire or anything like that. Please, politely let them know that that is not the case. I see tweets about this every day, which is funny because if you go to my Twitter, you can see my pinned tweet is a video of me letting everybody know that Chris Hero is back. We're just in the midst of a global pandemic. So once things ease up a little bit, I know I've been saying that for the last year, but when things get in a little bit better of a place, I will absolutely be back in the ring, doing what I love, traveling the globe, and just having matches with all kinds of people. There's so many people I want to wrestle with now. So thank you for your patience. Thank you for your support. And please keep interacting with us at Can Chris Hero. Let me know what you think of the shows. I love talking with people. And how do we end these episodes? We end them with a little bit of advice and a little bit of a recommendation. So my words of wisdom for this episode: when you are putting your match together and you're having conversations with the people that are in your match, whether it is a singles match, whether it is a tag, a 6-man, whatever it may be, the question will come up, you have an idea of something that you want to do, and then someone will chime in and say, I don't think that makes sense, or how can we have this make a little bit more sense, or what can we do? And what happens a lot of the time is people will say, nobody will notice. Um, it doesn't matter. Nobody will care. Those are three things that a lot of people will say. And, sometimes they're right. Sometimes it won't matter as much as you think it does in that moment. Maybe nobody will notice. And, maybe nobody will care. Hopefully, people will care. You never want to go out there with people who don't care. But what I find is that people say this as a bit of a deflection, because wrestling is not easy, man. It's not easy physically, and it certainly isn't easy mentally. So when a roadblock comes, we come upon a roadblock when we're putting a match together. Now we have to stop what we're doing and figure out how to get rid of this roadblock, right? Um, you have to figure things out. It's critical thinking. Um, and then sometimes something comes up, and like I said, it genuinely does not matter. However, when you think somebody won't notice, somebody will notice. When you think somebody won't care, there's going to be someone out there that cares. And when you think it doesn't matter, you will find that oftentimes it does matter. So this goes back to what I said a long time ago on one of these shows. Hold yourself to a higher standard. Don't be afraid to put a little extra thought into something. Um, I see I just see a lot of things. I've been in that situation myself, and I've been the one myself that says, I don't think it matters, right? But you have to look it back on film and see if that actually is the case. So just like I said, hold yourself to a higher standard. Once you get in the habit of trying to make sure that these details are there, these details make up your match. They are the impressions that are left on the audience. A match is a match. There's always going to be a match before yours. There's going to be a match after yours. But what are you going to do in your match that's going to resonate and stick with that audience? Details. These details are important. Don't think that they aren't. So challenge yourself when you're putting your matches together. Challenge yourself to figure out a way. If you've got this spot planned and you've got the illegal person that's going to be in for this spot in like a tag match, figure out a way to make the person legal, right? Take a couple seconds, think about it. And then at the end of the day, if you've come up with this spot and you can't find a way for it to make sense, or you can't find a way for it to make as much sense as possible, cut it. You don't need it. Figure something else out. And these experiences, they're just going to sharpen your mind. They're going to make you quicker, make you sharper when it comes to figuring out the best way to do things. I know we all get into a routine and it's easiest to stick to that routine, but sometimes when we step out of that routine for a minute and put a little extra thought into something, you take yourself to a higher plane, and now you're working on a higher level, and now you have more experience. So don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to put a little bit more thought into something. Don't be lazy. Don't shortchange yourself. Don't shortchange the audience, right? Everybody makes mistakes, and that is perfectly fine, but work on the process to get there. Hold yourself to that higher standard. That was a little bit longer than I intended. Thanks for bearing with me. And now for your musical recommendation. Normally I have a song, but today I have 3 songs. And the reason I have 3 songs is because we've had a couple tragedies lately. A couple guys have passed away. People that made great music, people that touched people all across the world with their words and with their sounds. And it's a bummer. I hate when things like this happen. It's the mortality of it and the sad people that are left behind, friends, fans, family. It's disappointing. But today we're going to do our part to remember these people and, remember them for what they've done, what they've given us. The first person is Shock G, Humpty Hump from Digital Underground. The song I am going to recommend is Same Song by Digital Underground. And that was the first song that I ever heard Tupac Shakur. And I think the first time I saw the song would have been in the movie Nothing But Trouble, which is this peculiar comedy based on the mine fires in Centralia, Pennsylvania. You've got Dan Aykroyd, John Candy, Chevy Chase, Demi Moore, and then there's this whole scene where Digital Underground comes in and um, they play their song, they get let out. It's just a bizarre memory from my childhood. But they have a song called Same Song, so I would recommend you check that out. Next on the list, we've got Whoa by Black Rob. Um, Great song. Just you know, the, the, um, the instrumental behind it is unforgettable. I think I still hear it occasionally during NBA games and just yeah, it really resonates for me from that early 2000s period, late 90s, early 2000s. And I can't hear that song without thinking of a guy I wrestled many, many times for IWA Mid South and for ICP's JCW, and that would be Isaiah. He came out to the song Whoa. And yeah, it always makes me think of that. So please check that song out. And the last is DMX. He had an extremely hard life. There's a lot to be said for his upbringing and the issues that he carried with him. But this man was incredibly gifted, incredibly talented, and it's like you go back and listen to his lyrics, and they're just every bit as good as the first time you heard them. I remember getting his first album my senior year of high school, and gosh, I just played that thing out. Um, just and then to drop another album later that year and have two platinum albums in the same calendar year, unheard of, unheard of. But the song is "Slippin'" by DMX. Uh, just very thought provoking. He talks about his journey, what he's been through, and how he's going to get through it. And it's bittersweet to listen back on, knowing that he's just passed. So not to end you guys on a downer, but yeah, check those songs out. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think of the songs I've recommended earlier. I love being able to introduce people to new music and uh, just name a song that you had forgotten about. It's not like I'm unearthing any of these crazy hidden gems that only me and a couple people know of. Like these are great songs by very talented artists. So let me know what you think. Again, thank you guys for your support. I appreciate the patience, and I am so excited to just kick this podcast into gear and get you guys more and more content. Let's have some more conversations. Let's talk a little bit more shit. And yeah, let's everybody be safe out there. Take care. And I will catch you next time on Can Chris Hero Save Wrestling? Thanks, guys.